We've been told a lie, my friends. We've been told that if we don't speak up, if we don't text first, if we don't chase, we'll be forgotten. But that's not true. Real power isn't loud. Real power doesn't beg for attention. Real power is calm, unshaken, and magnetic. That's why the most unforgettable people in your life aren't the ones who blow up your phone. They're the ones whose silence you can still feel, even when they're not around. Before we go any deeper, take a second to press the like button and subscribe, because today we're about to flip everything you've been taught about silence, attraction, and power. And trust me, what I'm about to share will completely change the way you see yourself and the way others see you. Hey folks, imagine this for a moment. You're standing in a crowded room where everyone is talking, laughing, and shouting to be heard. It's noisy, chaotic, overwhelming. But then you notice someone standing quietly in the corner, not seeking attention, not trying to impress anyone, just calm and still. And yet, for some reason, your eyes keep going back to them. You can't explain it, but their presence feels louder than the noise around you. That's what real power looks like. It's not in how much space you take up. It's in the gravity you create by simply existing. See, society tells you that you need to do more, speak more, try harder to be noticed. But that constant effort, that constant noise, is exactly what makes you forgettable. The people who truly pull others in are the ones who can sit with themselves. The ones who are not desperate for attention, who aren't afraid to be still, who live with a sense of purpose that doesn't need validation. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And that's what silence is, my friends. It's power over yourself. It's saying, I don't need to perform. I don't need to chase. I am enough exactly as I am. And when you carry that energy, people feel it. They wonder what's on your mind. They wonder why you're so calm when everyone else is scrambling for attention. That curiosity becomes attraction. Think about fire. The loud, crackling flames get attention, sure, but it's the steady, glowing embers that give off the lasting heat. They're quiet, but they hold power. They don't need to prove themselves. They just exist, and everything around them feels their warmth. That's the energy we're talking about today. And I get it. Silence can feel scary. You might think, if I stop reaching out, they'll forget me. But here's the truth. People don't forget the ones who leave an impression. They don't forget the man who walked away with calm confidence. They don't forget the presence that didn't need words to be felt. Silence is not emptiness. It's a force. It makes them reflect. It makes them question. It makes them miss you more than words ever could. So stay with me, because in this video, we're going to break down exactly why your silent, dark energy is far more powerful than chasing could ever be. And by the end, you'll understand why the man who masters silence doesn't get forgotten. He becomes unforgettable. Type it in the comments right now. Power in silence. Let the world know you're done chasing. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and let's get started. Number 1. Silence is not weakness. It's magnetic power. We live in a world that teaches you to be loud, to be seen, to always be available if you want to be remembered. Folks, that's the biggest lie you've ever been sold. People will tell you that if you don't text, if you don't call, if you don't constantly show up, you'll fade from their memory. But here's the truth. Real presence doesn't need constant noise. Real power is quiet. It's the kind of energy that lingers long after you've left the room. Picture this, a massive black hole floating silently in space. It makes no sound. It doesn't scream for attention. Yet its gravity is so strong that everything around it gets pulled in. That's the kind of energy we're talking about. The dark, calm power of someone who doesn't need to chase, who doesn't need to beg, because their very existence creates a pull that words never could. Now I know what might be running through your mind. If I stay silent, won't they forget me? Won't they move on to someone louder, more present? That fear is natural. It's the fear of being invisible. But think back to your own life. The people you remember most, the ones you can't stop thinking about, aren't always the loudest. They're the ones who left an impact through their presence, their actions, their calm confidence. You don't replay conversations with people who begged for your attention. You replay moments with those who carried themselves with quiet strength. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." And that's exactly why silence is powerful. It's self-control in its purest form. When you stop chasing, when you stop trying to prove yourself, you're telling the world, "I know my value. I don't need to be loud for you to feel it." But here's why it's so difficult for most people. We've been conditioned to believe that action equals progress, that if we're not constantly doing something, we're falling behind. It feels unnatural to sit still when we crave a response. It feels terrifying to let silence do the work because we think silence equals losing. Yet the irony is, the more you try to force someone's attention, the less they value it. Familiarity dulls desire. Constant presence kills mystery. Think of a rare diamond locked away in a vault. People desire it not because it's loud, not because it's everywhere, but because it's rare. When you're always available, you become background noise. But when you pull back, not out of spite but out of strength, you become rare again. And rarity, my friends, creates value. Let me break the biggest lie right now. Silence doesn't mean you've lost. It means you're in control. When you stay silent, you allow them to feel your absence. You give them the chance to wonder about you, to question their own choices, to realize what life feels like without you constantly there. People don't forget those who mattered. They don't stop thinking about the ones who walked away with dignity. And yes, it's going to feel uncomfortable. There will be nights when you'll be tempted to reach out, to remind them you still exist. But that's exactly where strength is built, in resisting the urge to chase validation. Because the moment you give in, you reset everything. You take away the space that makes them think, reflect, and miss you. Seneca once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." And so many men waste their lives chasing people who would have come back on their own, if only they'd stayed still. Silence isn't passive. It's active power. It's discipline. It's saying, "I choose me. I choose to build my life while they figure out what I'm worth." Imagine being the kind of person whose calmness makes others uneasy. Not because you're cold, but because you're grounded. While they're busy wondering why you're not calling, you're busy building. While they're stuck replaying moments, you're focused on your goals, your growth, your purpose. That's when silence stops being empty and becomes magnetic. This is where true attraction is born, not in words, not in constant reminders, but in the mystery of your presence. When you're silent, they feel it, they notice it, and whether they admit it or not, that quiet strength pulls them in stronger than any message ever could. So here's what I want you to do right now. Write it in the comments. My silence is power. Show it to yourself. Show it to the world around you. Because the moment you choose silence from a place of strength, not fear, you become someone unforgettable. And stay with me, because what we're about to talk about next will take this even deeper. You'll see why your absence isn't weakness. It's the exact thing that makes your presence impossible to ignore. Number 2, your absence echoes louder than your presence. We grow up believing that the loudest person gets remembered, that if we don't remind people we exist, we'll be forgotten. But folks, that belief couldn't be further from the truth. Real presence doesn't come from noise. It comes from the space you leave behind. Your absence, when rooted in strength, can echo louder than any words you could ever say. Think about the last time you lost something important. Maybe it was a watch you wore every day, or a photo that meant the world to you. While it was there, you barely noticed it. But the moment it was gone, that absence became heavy. Suddenly, you thought about it more than ever. Not because it made noise, but because it left a gap. People work the same way. When you stop showing up in every notification, when your name no longer flashes on their screen, you create space, and space creates curiosity. Now, I know the fear that creeps in when you pull back. What if they forget me? What if someone else takes my place? That's the voice of insecurity, the part of you that thinks constant action equals value. But here's the reality. Familiarity dulls desire. When you're always there, you become part of the background. Like a song that plays on repeat so many times, people stop hearing it. But the moment that song stops playing, that silence makes them crave it again. Marcus Aurelius said, "Don't waste the rest of your life worrying about other people. Be your own master." And that's exactly what absence does. It shifts the power back to you. You're no longer waiting for their validation. You're no longer trapped in the cycle of proving your worth. Instead, you're living your life. You're focused on your path, your goals, your growth. And in that space, they start to notice the difference. Picture this. Two men walk away from someone they care about. The first one turns back constantly, sending messages, liking posts, finding excuses to stay in their orbit. The second one, he walks away calmly, with purpose, never once breaking his stride. Who do you think stays on their mind longer? It's always the second man. Why? Because absence, when combined with confidence, becomes unforgettable. But let's be honest, this isn't easy. Silence is hard because it forces you to face yourself. It leaves you alone with your own thoughts, your own fears, your own doubts. And that's why most people break it. They send that late-night message just to feel something, just to know they still matter. But every time you give in, you reset the clock. You take away the power of the space you created. It's like planting a seed in the ground. If you dig it up every day to check if it's growing, it never will. Growth needs time, space, patience. The same is true for relationships. When you step back, when you stop chasing, you give the other person room to feel your absence, to reflect, to miss what they no longer have. Seneca said, "He suffers more than necessary who suffers before it is necessary." That's what most men do. They create their own suffering by panicking too soon. They assume silence means rejection. They convince themselves they've been forgotten. But in reality, absence is doing the work for them. It's building emotional weight night after night when the world finally goes quiet. Have you ever noticed that at 2 a.m., when the phone is still and the room is dark, that's when memories hit the hardest? That's when the mind replays conversations, moments, and feelings that daylight distractions hide. Right now, while you're busy wondering if they're thinking about you, they probably are, especially in those quiet hours when there's no one else to pull their focus. The beauty of this, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to force it. You don't have to remind them you exist. If you've left an impression, if you've lived with presence and integrity, that's enough. Because people don't lose sleep over someone who meant nothing to them. And that's where your power lies. Not in chasing, not in constant reassurance, but in trusting that your absence speaks for itself. The man who can step back without fear, who can let silence do what words cannot, is the man who becomes unforgettable. So what should you do right now? Build yourself. Focus on your own life. Be the man who walks calmly, not the one who keeps turning back to see if they're being followed. Because here's the truth. They will notice. They will feel the gap. And whether they admit it or not, that absence will echo louder than any message you could have sent. Type it in the comments. My absence has power. Show yourself. Show the world around you that you don't need to chase. Because the moment you choose self-control over impulse, you shift from being someone who begs for attention to someone who commands it without a word. And stay with me. Because what comes next will show you why this quiet strength doesn't just make them think about you, it makes them realize your worth in a way they never saw before. Number 3, mystery creates emotional gravity. People don't crave what they can predict, they crave what they don't fully understand. And this, my friends, is why mystery creates an undeniable pull. We live in a world where everything is loud, constant, and desperate for attention. Everyone is posting, texting, talking, trying to be seen. But the person who can hold back, who can resist the urge to always explain themselves, who can stay calm and unpredictable, that person becomes magnetic. Think about it. Imagine walking into a room filled with chatter, with people talking over each other, laughing, trying to be noticed. But in the corner, there's someone calm, composed, silent. They're not scrolling through their phone. They're not fighting to be heard. And yet, everyone eventually glances at them. Why? Because mystery is powerful. We are naturally drawn to what we can't fully figure out. Here's the lie you've been told, that being available all the time makes you more desirable. That constant attention is the key to keeping someone's interest. But that belief is exactly what makes you forgettable. Familiarity dulls the senses. When someone always knows where you are, what you're doing, what you're thinking, you become predictable, like background noise. And nobody gets excited about background noise. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Those words hold more power than you realize. Instead of constantly trying to show your value, live in such a way that your value is felt without explanation. That's what mystery is. It's power without performance. It's presence without begging for attention. But why does this feel so hard? Because we crave validation. We want to be seen, heard, remembered. We convince ourselves that if we're not constantly reminding someone of our presence, they'll forget we exist. That fear drives us to overshare, overtext, overgive, until we've stripped away the very thing that makes us attractive: unpredictability. Think about your favorite movie, the one that had you glued to the screen, desperate to know what happened next. What made it so gripping? It wasn't because you knew exactly what would happen. It was the suspense, the unknown, the mystery. People are no different. When they know everything about you, when there's nothing left to wonder about, the excitement fades. Mystery is what makes people reflect when you're not around. It's what makes them lie awake at night wondering, what's on their mind? Why aren't they reaching out? Who are they becoming without me? These questions only exist when you pull back, not out of malice, but out of self-respect. It's like a rare diamond locked away, not handed out to anyone who asks. Its rarity creates value, and that value creates desire. When you're too available, when you flood someone's life with your constant presence, you lose that value. You go from being the diamond to being a pebble anyone can pick up. But when you step back, you reintroduce something most people have forgotten: scarcity. And scarcity changes everything. Suddenly, you're not the person they can always reach. Now, you're the one they wonder about. You're the one whose silence feels louder than anyone else's noise. This is where most men struggle. They mistake silence for weakness. They think, if I don't say something, they'll lose interest. But the opposite is true. Every day you remain silent. Every moment you resist the urge to explain yourself, you grow in value in their mind. Because people don't crave what they already have. They crave what feels just out of reach. Seneca once said, "To be everywhere is to be nowhere." And that's exactly why constant availability kills attraction. If you're always there, you blend in. But if you pull back, if you move with calm confidence and self-control, you become someone they can't ignore, even in your absence. Picture this. It's late at night. They're scrolling through their phone, aimlessly checking notifications. They pass your name in their contacts. For a moment, their fingers hover over it, but they don't press. Not because they don't want to, but because the mystery of your silence is louder than any words you could have said. They wonder what you're doing, who you're becoming, whether you've already moved on. And here's where your true power lies. You're not silent because you're playing a game. You're silent because you respect yourself too much to beg for attention. You're silent because you're busy building, evolving, becoming a better version of yourself, one who no longer needs to be validated. When you live this way, you shift from chasing to attracting. You go from being predictable to unforgettable, because people will always crave what they can't fully figure out. So, my friends, here's your challenge. Let go of the urge to explain yourself. Stop handing out your presence like it has no value. Be intentional with your energy. Be rare, because rarity creates value, and value creates desire. Write it in the comments right now. Mystery builds attraction. Let the world see that you've chosen to step back, not out of weakness, but out of strength. Because when you embrace mystery, you don't just make them think about you, you make them realize your worth without saying a single word. And stay with me, because what's coming next will show you why this dark, calm energy doesn't just pull people in. It makes you the one they can't forget, no matter how much time passes. Number 4. Dark energy feels unreachable yet alluring. There's something undeniably powerful about a person who doesn't need to be seen to be felt. My friends, this is what we call dark energy. It's not evil, it's not cold, it's calm, grounded, and deeply magnetic. It's the kind of presence that draws people in without you saying a single word. And the reason it's so powerful is simple. It feels unreachable, yet impossible to ignore. Think about a fire burning in the middle of a dark night. You can see its glow from far away. You feel its warmth, even at a distance, but you can't just walk up and grab it. It's untouchable. That's what dark energy feels like. People sense your power, they notice your presence, but there's a barrier of self-respect and discipline that stops them from thinking they can take it for granted. Here's where most people get it wrong. They believe that to be desired, they have to be constantly available, always accessible, always ready to give more. But that makes you easy to reach. And what's easy to reach is easy to dismiss. When you make yourself too available, you strip away your own value. You lose that sense of mystery, that magnetic pull that makes people wonder what's going on inside your mind. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Dark energy is exactly that, power over yourself. It's the ability to stay centered, no matter what someone else does. It's choosing not to react out of fear or insecurity. It's walking away from a situation with quiet dignity instead of begging for attention. But I know the fear that rises when you pull back. What if they think I don't care? What if they move on to someone else? That fear is the reason so many men break their silence. They give away their power for a moment of reassurance. And yet, every time they do, they reinforce the idea that they're easy to get back, that their presence comes cheap. You need to understand this. Dark energy isn't about playing games. It's about having standards for yourself. It's about knowing your worth so deeply that you don't need to prove it. When you master this, something interesting happens. People start to feel your absence more. They sense that you've stepped back, and it unsettles them, not because you're punishing them, but because your self-control highlights everything they lack. Picture this. Someone used to getting constant validation suddenly doesn't hear from you. At first, they might feel relieved. No more texts, no more pressure. But as time passes, a question creeps in. Why aren't they chasing me anymore? Did they lose interest? Did I lose them? That question grows louder with every silent day, and the more they wonder, the more power shifts to you. Seneca once said, "It is the power of the mind to be unconquerable." Dark energy is exactly that. It's the quiet strength of someone who knows they are enough with or without validation. It's being able to say, "I want you in my life, but I don't need you to complete it." That energy is rare, and rarity always commands attention. Most men panic at this stage. They mistake calmness for passivity. They think, if I don't fight for them, I'll lose them forever. But real attraction doesn't come from force. It comes from the natural pull created by someone who values themselves enough to step back. When you embody dark energy, you become a paradox. You're present, but not desperate. You're warm, but not easily claimed. You're grounded, yet impossible to fully figure out. And that paradox is what keeps people thinking about you long after you've walked away. Imagine this. Late at night, they pick up their phone, scrolling through their messages. They notice your name, but there's no new text, no notification. And instead of feeling relief, they feel something deeper, the weight of your absence. They start to wonder where you are, what you're doing, who you're becoming without them. That's when the pull begins, not because you begged for it, but because your silence became louder than any words you could have said. The key is discipline. Dark energy is powerful because it's rare. Most people give in to impulse. They break their silence for a quick fix of attention. They chase because they can't sit with the discomfort of being alone. But every time you resist that urge, every time you stay grounded in your own power, you separate yourself from the rest. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." So ask yourself, who do you want to be? The man who begs for attention, or the man who commands it without a word? The one who loses himself trying to be seen, or the one who stands so strong in his own worth that people can't help but notice? This is your choice. And when you choose to hold your power, when you choose silence rooted in strength, you create a kind of gravity that can't be ignored. You stop being just another option. You become the rare presence they can't stop thinking about. Write it in the comments right now. My energy is my power. Show it to yourself. Show it to the world. Because the man who masters his own energy never needs to chase. It's others who are pulled toward him every single time. Stay with me, because next we're going to talk about the war between ego and heart, and why their silence doesn't mean they've moved on. It means they're fighting a battle you can't see, and you're already winning it. Number 5. Their ego stays quiet, but their heart remembers. It's easy to assume that silence means you've been erased, that if they're not calling, texting, or reaching out, they've moved on without a second thought. But that belief is far from the truth. Most of the time, what's really happening is an inner battle, one you can't see, but one that you're very much a part of. It's the war between their ego and their heart. The ego says, don't call them first, don't show weakness, don't let them know you miss them. The heart, on the other hand, is busy replaying memories, moments, and emotions they thought they had buried. And in this war, pride often wins in the short term, but the heart always remembers. Think about a time you missed someone deeply but refused to be the first to reach out. Maybe you told yourself it was about self-respect. Maybe you were scared of being rejected, or maybe you just didn't want to admit that you still cared. That's exactly what they're going through. Outwardly, they look fine. They post their photos, go out with friends, live their life. But privately, in the quiet hours when the distractions fade, the heart begins to whisper. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." For you, this means living in a way that doesn't need their validation. You're not responsible for convincing them to act on what they feel. Your job is to stay grounded, to keep becoming, to let your actions speak louder than any desperate message ever could. Here's the mistake most people make. They see the silence and assume it's indifference. Out of fear, they try to fix it, sending a text, reaching out, proving they're still there. But every time you do that, you break the very tension that makes them think about you. You remove the gap that forces them to reflect. Picture this. They're lying in bed at night, scrolling through their phone. A photo pops up. A song plays. A memory flashes in their mind. And for a moment, they hover over your name. But pride whispers, "Don't do it. Don't be the first one to break." So they put the phone down. Outwardly, it looks like they don't care. But inside, their heart is wide awake, stuck on a loop of thoughts they can't silence. This is why calm detachment is so powerful. You're not punishing them. You're not ignoring them to prove a point. You're simply choosing not to let their inner war pull you out of your peace. Because the truth is, their ego can keep them silent, but it can't erase the impact you've left. Most men fail here. They take the silence personally. They think, if I don't act now, I'll lose them forever. But in reality, that's when they had the upper hand, right before they broke their own silence. When you stay calm, when you stay focused on your own life, you force them to feel the weight of that gap. You give them the chance to realize that your presence wasn't guaranteed, that it had value. Seneca said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." Chasing someone who's letting pride run the show is exactly that. Craving more when you already have the power within yourself. The Stoic man understands that true value doesn't need to beg for recognition. It simply exists, and those who are meant to see it eventually do. And here's the powerful part. When you stay silent, you give them space to wrestle with their pride. You let them sit in their own discomfort. Because as much as pride tries to protect them, the heart has a way of breaking through in the stillness. That's when memories come rushing back. That's when they start to realize how much they miss the version of you who wasn't desperate for their attention. Imagine being that presence in their life, the one they can't stop thinking about, even when they refuse to admit it. That's the gift of calm, dark energy. You're not chasing. You're not trying to convince them of anything. You're simply living. You're evolving. You're becoming someone whose silence is louder than any words could ever be. This doesn't mean they'll call tomorrow. It doesn't mean they'll suddenly swallow their pride and come running back. But every day you stay grounded. Every moment you resist the urge to reach out, you add weight to the emotional scale. Their ego can hold out for a while, but it's never stronger than the pull of a heart that remembers what it's lost. So ask yourself, who do you want to be right now? The man who bends to his fear, or the man who trusts his worth? The one who chases, or the one who knows that real value never begs to be seen? Write it in the comments right now. I trust my silence. Let that be your reminder. Show yourself and show the world that you're done letting someone else's pride control your peace. And stay with me, because next we're going to uncover one of the most powerful truths, the law of emotional momentum. This is where silence stops being still and starts working in your favor, building a weight that makes your presence impossible to ignore. Number 6. The law of emotional momentum. Most people think nothing is happening when there's silence. They assume that if days pass without a message, the other person has moved on. But here's the truth: silence isn't empty. It builds something powerful over time: emotional momentum. Every day that passes without contact, the weight of your absence grows. Every night they lie awake thinking of you but don't act. The tension inside them becomes heavier. Think of a snowball at the top of a hill. At first it's small, almost insignificant, but the longer it rolls downhill, the bigger and faster it gets. That's exactly how emotions work in silence. At first, your absence might feel like a relief to them. No texts, no calls, no reminders. But slowly, as the days pass, a quiet heaviness forms. They start to notice the gap you've left. They start to wonder, why aren't they reaching out? Have they moved on? Did I lose them? And with every unanswered question, that snowball of emotion gets bigger. This is where most men fail. They panic. They think, if I don't act now, I'll lose them forever. And so they send the text. They break the silence. They try to force a connection that would have come naturally if they had just waited. But every time you do that, you destroy the momentum that was working in your favor. You stop the snowball before it can grow. Epictetus once said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." The man who understands the law of emotional momentum knows that patience is not passive. It's a decision. It's active power. Because waiting with purpose, without fear, allows the other person to feel the full weight of your absence. Picture this. They're lying in bed at night. The distractions of the day are gone. No more work, no friends to text, no notifications to keep them busy. And in that stillness, their thoughts circle back to you. The last time you spoke, the way you carried yourself, the way you didn't beg when they pulled away. That memory starts looping again and again, because there's nothing to interrupt it. And each time they think of you but don't act, the emotional tension increases. Pride tells them not to reach out, but curiosity, regret, and longing get louder in the quiet hours. That's momentum. And if you've left a strong impression, if you've walked away with calm confidence, your silence becomes harder to ignore. But this only works if you trust the process. If you resist the urge to break your own silence out of fear, because the moment you reach out, you remove the very tension that makes them reflect. You go from being the person they're quietly missing to being the one who's easily available again. And familiarity, as we've said before, kills desire. Seneca wrote, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future." That's exactly what you need to practice here. Instead of obsessing over when they'll call, focus on your own life. Live so fully that when they do think of you, which they will, it's not just memories of who you were that flood their mind, but curiosity about who you're becoming right now. Emotional momentum is powerful because it builds without you having to do anything. You don't have to manipulate. You don't have to prove your worth. You simply have to be disciplined enough to let silence work in your favor. Every day you stay grounded. Every time you resist chasing, you add another layer of weight to the emotions they're feeling. Think of it like standing at the center of your life while they pace back and forth in theirs. They wonder if they should call. They question whether they've lost you. Their ego tells them to stay quiet, but their heart keeps whispering your name. That internal war is only possible because you've given them space to feel it. Most men will never experience the power of this law because they lack patience. They dig up the seed before it can grow. They ruin the process by acting out of fear instead of strength. But the man who practices restraint, who trusts that his presence was enough, is the man who becomes unforgettable. And here's the best part. You're not doing this to punish them. You're not waiting by the phone. You're living. You're building. You're focused on your growth, your goals, your purpose. And that, more than anything, makes your absence heavier. Because they're not just missing the person you were, they're realizing you're evolving into someone even more powerful without them. So ask yourself, will you be the man who panics and chases, or the man who understands that patience and discipline are power? Will you be the one who resets the clock out of fear, or the one who lets emotional gravity do what words never could? Type it in the comments right now. Patience builds power. Remind yourself that silence isn't doing nothing, it's allowing the snowball of emotion to grow bigger every day. And stay with me, because next we'll talk about how calm detachment turns you into someone unforgettable, the kind of person whose presence only grows stronger in their absence. Number 7. Calm detachment makes you unforgettable. There is a rare kind of power that comes from letting go, not in anger, not in bitterness, but in pure self-control. Calm detachment is not about punishing anyone. It's about standing so firm in your worth that you don't have to force a single thing. And when you embody that kind of energy, you become unforgettable. Think about the last time you met someone who didn't need validation. They weren't trying to impress you. They weren't desperate to be liked. Yet, somehow, they stayed in your mind long after they were gone. That's because detachment creates contrast. Most people cling, chase, over-explain. But the one who can stand still, who can choose peace over proving, instantly separates themselves from the rest. Here's the truth most men never learn. Detachment is not weakness. It's strength in its highest form. It's the ability to care about someone without letting them dictate your value. It's walking away from a situation without losing yourself in the process. And that, my friends, is why calm detachment is so magnetic. Marcus Aurelius said, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." Detachment is the proof that you've mastered this. You've stopped giving power to things and people you can't control. You've realized that true strength is not found in reaction, but in restraint. But let's be honest, it's not easy. It feels unnatural to stay calm when every part of you wants to reach out. It feels terrifying to let silence do the work when you fear being forgotten. Yet every time you resist the urge to chase, you reinforce your value. You remind yourself and them that your presence is not cheap. Picture this. They're lying in bed late at night. Their pride is still holding them back, but their heart is restless. They scroll through their phone, see your name, and for a moment, they want to reach out. But they don't. And that silence, instead of making you weak, makes you powerful, because you didn't break it first. You didn't give them what they expected. You chose your peace over their validation. This is why calm detachment leaves such a lasting mark. You're not just creating mystery. You're showing that your life doesn't revolve around them. You're proving that your growth, your purpose, your mission continues with or without their presence. And that realization hits harder than any text or call ever could. Think of a strong oak tree in a storm. It doesn't bend at every gust of wind. It doesn't fall apart when things get rough. It stands firm, and because of that strength, it becomes impossible to ignore. You can't shake it. You can't move it. You can only stand in awe of its resilience. That's what calm detachment feels like. The people who matter will always notice when you walk away with grace instead of anger. They will always remember the man who didn't beg, who didn't crumble, who chose peace instead of panic. And even if they don't call tomorrow, Even if they don't reach out next week, that absence will stay with them. Because people forget those who beg for attention. They never forget the ones who didn't need to. Seneca said, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." This is your trial. The silence you're in right now isn't punishment, it's an opportunity. It's a test of who you are when no one's validating you. And if you pass this test, if you can stay calm, stay grounded, stay focused on your own growth, you'll look back months from now and thank yourself for not breaking. Because here's the real reward of detachment. You stop living in someone else's orbit. You build your own. You become so focused on becoming your best self that whether they return or not stops mattering. You realize that what's truly meant for you will come without being forced. So ask yourself, who do you want to be from this moment on? The man who waits for a message that may never come, or the man who uses this silence to evolve into someone so powerful, so grounded, that they can't ignore you even in your absence? If you've been listening to this message and it hit even a little, take a second right now and type it in the comments. I choose peace over chasing. Let that be your declaration today. Show yourself, show everyone reading that you've decided to hold your power instead of giving it away. And if this message spoke to you, do one more thing. Hit that like button, share this with a brother who needs to hear it, and make sure you're subscribed. Because we're just getting started. You're on the path to becoming a man whose energy speaks louder than any words ever could. Stay stoic, stay powerful, and remember, your calm detachment isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of you becoming unforgettable.